So I want to go back to my Disney villains video. I talked about how Maleficent wasn't the best villain ever and all that, but I really didn't touch on who was the best villain, and that's what I want to talk about now. And when you know it, I didn't even mention this guy. I didn't even talk about this guy in the last video. I talked about Frollo, the guy from Mulan. I can't even remember his name. I talked about Scar and Hades, all those other characters, but I missed this guy, and it turns out he is the greatest Disney villain. No, fuck that. Greatest villain, period. He is the most evil, diabolical piece of shit ever. Who am I talking about? This guy. Yeah. This is he who shall not be named. Voldemort doesn't have shit on this guy. And he literally is not named. He's just called the Coachman. He's this weird, red-coated son of a bitch from Pinocchio. This guy is the greatest villain ever. And I'll tell you why. So, we remember in Pinocchio when Honest John is bragging in the bar about how he sold Pinocchio to this puppeteer, to Stromboli was his name. And then this weird evil Santa Claus looking dude says, you know, how'd you blokes like to make some real money? And they end up taking Pinocchio and all these other kids to Pleasure Island where they turn them into donkeys, and then Pinocchio escapes, and that's the end of it. That can't be the end of it! Are you kidding me? This guy just stole a bunch of kids, took them to some weird island, turned them into donkeys, and then sold them as slave labor. And he just gets away with it, apparently. That's what makes him the greatest villain. He wins. He gets away with it. We never hear anything about this motherfucker again. Not to mention, I mean, first of all, transforming into the donkeys is like one of the most terrifying scenes in movie history. Seeing Lampwick just screaming for his mama and he's turning into a donkey and everything. It freaked me out as a kid. And then, after they turn into the donkeys, most of these kids can't talk anymore. The ones that can talk, he separates and he doesn't sell them right away. He sells the ones who can't talk. So that means even if evil Santa got caught, these kids have no chance of being saved from slavery because they can't say anything anymore. Everyone thinks they're just donkeys now. Hannibal Lecter doesn't have shit on this guy. And if you think he's bad in the movie, oh my God, read the book. The book is more fucked up. In the book, he's also known as the Coachman, but he introduces himself as the little man, and he doesn't look anything like he does in the movie. He's actually very short in stature and skinny rather than evil Santa. And while he is taking Pinocchio and the other kids to Toy Island, it's not called Pleasure Island in the book, it's called Toy Island. That's where your mom goes. Of course, your mom could also go to Pleasure Island. Your mom's a whore either way, I don't care. Back to the story. While they are traveling, Pinocchio has to travel on one of his donkeys because there's no more room left in his carriage. And the donkey bucks Pinocchio off and he falls off. And the Coachman gets pissed off, and how does he discipline the donkey? He bites his fucking ear off. I am dead serious. The Coachman just goes up and goes straight up Mike Tyson on a donkey. And the most fucked up part is that Pinocchio and all the kids keep traveling with this guy. As soon as a guy starts biting ears off of donkeys, that is like beyond a red flag. I mean, not to mention that after Pinocchio gets back on the donkey can still talk and tries to warn Pinocchio. What does the Coachman do? He bites his other ear off. Jesus fucking Christ. Disney read this book and said, hey, let's make something for the kids. Can we get any sort of closure on this story? Anything whatsoever? Just let me know that this guy had his comeuppance at least. I realize that the story is called Pinocchio and not the Donkey Boys of Pleasure Island, not to be confused with the porno of the same name. So I realize that the entire story only has to do with plot points that are relevant to the story of Pinocchio himself. So it doesn't have to continue with what happens to the boys or the coachman or whatever. But couldn't they just give us something at the end? Like a newspaper headline that says evil Santa gunned down in a standoff with the police, or a bunch of angry parents dragging him off with torches and pitchforks about to burn him at the stake. Now that I mention it, where are all the outraged parents in this story? There are children missing. This guy's been doing this for a while. But there is no outrage in the community, no worry about, hey, where's all of our kids going? None of the parents care. Hey, Federico, have you seen little Julian running around? He probably joined the gang, who cares? That's some racist shit. So not only do we have this evil Santa that gets away with everything, but apparently we've got an entire community in Italy that gives no shits about their kids whatsoever. No wonder they turned out bad and wanted to go to Toy Island or Pleasure Island or whatever. And how come nobody's asking Geppetto anything? Everyone else has kids missing, and all of a sudden he's got a 5 to 8 year old son at the end, and he's never touched a woman in his life? I have to know. I have to know how this ends. What happens to evil Santa and all that. You know what? Since they didn't do it, I'm going to come up with my own way that it ends. Evil Santa turns out to actually be Santa. And this Italian community had so many kids ending up on the naughty list that he shaves his beard off, goes in disguise, and kidnaps all these kids, takes them to Pleasure Island, turns them into donkeys with his Christmas magic. It's one of his lesser known powers. And then he presents the idea, he presents the idea that he's going to sell them into slavery, but it turns out this is just the Christmas version of Scared Straight. So he magics all the kids back into humans, he makes them promise to be good little boys from now on, and then he drops them off in their homes through their chimneys. Unfortunately, some of the children get horribly burned because some of the chimneys were lit and Santa was drinking when he came up with this idea. But hey, at least they're not still donkey slaves. I'm Jamie Norwood. Subscribe to my channel, follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Have a good time.